So Eli alluded to some of the things that I do. So I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth about that because this is after lunch, and I've been told and I've seen many, many times that after lunch is when people kind of get a little sleepy and food coma-like. So I think that's why they plugged me in here, so that I would keep you awake. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for you to ask me questions through this. This needs to stop popping up because I can't see how long I have. So Eli was alluding to the University of Invoke, which is now going to be pivoting because in startup world we pivot all the time. So the University of Invoke is going to stop being once off 4-hour classes that we have been doing for the last couple of quarters, and instead we're going to be developing a few different programs that will last for 10 weeks long to really give people a true boot camp experience on community marketing and startup marketing. Startup marketing doesn't really apply to you guys, but since I've been working so much in nonprofits with Eli and before that with Chimp, you guys heard from John earlier today, I realized that there's a heck of a lot of crossover between tech and nonprofits. So I'm kind of bringing that sort of lens, I guess, here today. So I have 9 different things that I call my secrets. Now, I should also say this, I haven't said this out loud before. I actually don't really believe in social media. Yeah, I know. Shh, that's right. Okay, social media is like a tool, like a fork, right? If you don't put anything on the fork, there's nothing to eat. So it has nothing to do with the tool that you decide to use, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, whatever your pleasure might be. It's all about on how you actually engage. And a lot of the stuff that I think about every day is just how darn simple it is and how hard it is at the same time because we overcomplicate things. So it's simple because all it really is about engaging with each other, and that's why I said you two get it. You bumped into each other, you had a small engagement, and you're smiling, which means you might continue to have a conversation that's just based on proximity. It had nothing to do with social media. You know, people are like, how does this stuff scale? You say you spend all of your days out having coffee. I'm like, I sure do. And then I reinforce all that stuff on social media because that just happens to be a tool to keep a conversation going. And yes, there's lots of little idiosyncrasies about the languages of social media, hashtags and frequency and reach and all this stuff. And I can totally share all that stuff. But today I thought it would be a lot more valuable to talk about some of the secrets of being actually truly engaged. And instead of me talking the whole time, I want to hear questions from all of you. So get ready to put your question hats on and grill me. We've got 20 minutes. My Twitter handle is marketing_girl. In case we don't get to your question, I will answer all of them. I also have a resource bank to give you. If you tweet your email address to @youofinvoke, that's you of Invoke, I'll give you a whole resource bank of tools to measure stuff. Because that is the one thing that we have to do when we're practicing social media stuff in business. We need to measure it to make sure that it's working and to make sure that our audience is actually participating the way that we want. So I'll give that stuff to you as well. All right, on to a slide. It's never about you. And by that I mean me, but I really mean you. So when we go online and we start thinking about the stuff that people really want to hear about, it always has to do with something that's going to give them something, right? Does everyone know what FOMO is? Sort of fear, some people know, fear of missing out. Okay, so the reason that some things get good play on social is because people feel like they're going to miss out on something. This actually happened with somebody in the crowd, Annika. Annika was very upset with me because I didn't tell her about this event. I had tweeted about it, I had Facebooked about it, I had told lots of my friends about it, but I guess Annika missed some of those posts. And she was pretty upset because she might have missed out. She actually text messaged me how upset she was that I didn't tell her about this event. I should have just sent a carrier pigeon to Annika. So people have a fear of missing out. People want to feel smarter about things. Think about when you go online. How do you want to feel? Do you engage with friends because they've told you something that makes you feel like, I know about the fact that Taco Fino just gave us awesome tacos. How do we find out about these little things, right? We find out from our friends, we find out from brands, but what we need to do when we're thinking about what to write is to think about our audience first, and that's my point number 1. Questions about how to do this. Let's jump right into it. How do you, why do you, oh, it's so hard, you have to actually pretend like you're your audience, those kinds of things. Yes, sir. So how do you know who's reading your content because you have a lot of different kinds of friends on Facebook and on Twitter? Yeah, good question. So there's a number of different ways. You need to listen as much as they are. So checking to see who your audience actually is, there's a bunch of different tools that will actually help you do that. So one that I've been experimenting with is called Communit. It's COMMUN.IT. It's in my little resource bank too for that. And it tells you who the people are who are truly engaged, who are actually like reading your tweets, who are clicking through on things. So you get to know like which ones are like your target audience. And yes, you're gonna have lots of people who aren't paying attention to what you're saying because there's a lot of noise out there and that's okay. What you're really looking for is that like creme de la creme that's rising to the top. Yeah. Any other questions about this one? Okay. All right, I'm moving. Oh, this Wi-Fi thing keeps popping up. Stop it. Okay. You have to make your conversations count. I see so much lazy tweeting, and I'm guilty of it too, but I see a lot of lazy tweeting where we just like see that somebody has responded to something and then we just hit retweet because it's easier than like actually saying something meaningful. I spend a lot of my time like auditing my our startups and what they're doing to help them like make them a little better. Sometimes I feel like a golf coach. I'm like kind of like just helping on one part of the swing. But I see a lot of them retweeting and obviously recognizing, and probably I see this in our office a lot, people being like, yay, they tweeted at me, but not actually taking the time to send something meaningful and thoughtful back. So my big thing on this is every conversation that's happening out there, any interaction that someone's having with you, whether they actually like put your, tagged you in it or they just happen to say your brand in it, you should be responding back. Now I know it's like, oh, it doesn't scale, it takes too much time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true, but you were there for a reason, right? You were there to engage with an audience. You are spending your time doing what? Building awareness, building relationships, trying to get your story out. This person took the time to engage with you. It's a lot easier to engage back with them. That's the low-hanging fruit. The non-low-hanging fruit, the PR relationships that take like years to develop, the awareness campaigns that cost a lot of money to produce, this is right there in front of you, so take the opportunity. Questions? Am I going too fast, too slow? Is this on par with what you guys wanted to hear today? Okay, cool. If there's no questions, oh, yes?
What's the timeline? Like, I'm not on Twitter all the time for my organization, and I really don't want to be.
Fair.
So what's the timeline for, like, feedback and stuff?
Yeah, so the question is, what's the timeline for tweeting back? I see this much like I see my personal relationships. If you've created some kind of like expectation that you're someone who tweets back or who texts back your friends like immediately, then that's what people come to expect of you. If you are a business who's doing it within business hours, state that up front. You're human. Your business is a business. It's running from these hours to these hours. You know, let people know. You can even do that in your bio. Like, I'm here from 9 to 5. Or you can do what WestJet does. They sign in the morning and they sign out in the evening, right? Hello and goodbye. And it's truncated like that. The additional thing that you can do is you can, I guess, let people know like individually, right? Like I'm like that. I'm not. There's just too many messages everywhere. I always get back to everyone. Sometimes it takes longer. I just act human and apologize for the fact that it took me a little longer to respond to some than other, because usually it comes in waves. Like if all of you take me up on asking me a bunch of questions, it's gonna take me a while to get back to you on all of your answers, right? Hopefully that helps. Yeah. Hi. Oh, okay, very good question. So what's the best time to tweet when you have like multiple time zones? There are lots of great tools that can tell you what your optimal time to tweet is, because there is no one optimal time. It has to do with your audience. So the one I'm thinking about is, I think it's called, is it Follower Wonk? Again, it's in the resource bank that I have. There's like 20 things in there. I think it's called Follower Wonk, and it'll actually tell you where your optimal times are to tweet based on the time that your followers are online. I had one more idea kind of for you and both for you. Buffer does this. They, each person at Buffer on their marketing team, they have like scheduled drop-ins on their Twitter streams. So they just drop in like at whatever time that they've scheduled in to double check on those things. So that's just their practice and their habit. I got an email from somebody the other day. It's Yelp, which is where I come from. So it was cool to see the community manager doing this. She has an auto email that says, I check emails at this time and this time and this time and this time. I'll get back to you then. I'm like, sweet, that's perfect. I want to see more of that.
So what's the optimal time to tweet next to her?
It's all about your audience. So my marketing girl audience, the optimal times are 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. I don't know why my people aren't up earlier, whatever. My Invoke Labs stuff, it's 8:55 a.m. and like 12:59 p.m. So you need to go and look at what it is that your audience has and then just continue to measure that so you know what time makes sense for you. Yeah. All right, next up. Making real-world connections. Okay, so this is where everyone always says this doesn't scale and blah, 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 and what I always say, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't have to scale. So I go to a lot of coffee meetings, I meet a lot of people one-on-one, I have a lot of DMs, like direct messaging conversations, and longer kind of like email chains. Wherever the people want to talk to me, I will talk to that person. Now, at the beginning, when you're a new budding startup or a new budding charity, or you're trying to get a new message out, you need to have more one-on-ones. You gotta lay a solid foundation, right? And when it becomes a thing where you've got like millions, yay, you've got lots of people, that's awesome. When it gets to there, you're one to many, but you still need to have multiple ears to the ground so that you can know what your audience is really thinking, feeling, what they're talking about. So, you know, maybe some of you manage like larger teams of people, and it's good to have kind of like senior mentors in those teams who tell you what the lay of the land is out there on the front lines. This is no different. So you need to keep investing in the people who are your truest advocates. Questions? I see one smile. That's good. I like that. So we're all just in agreement? We're all doing this? Awesome. Okay. Okay, tell engaging stories. I know that Net2Van does lots of awesome meetups where they talk about telling engaging stories. Here's my reason for telling an engaging story. It has legs. Anyone who's in a relationship has a story of how they met their significant other. It's probably the story that they get asked a lot to tell. So you get good at telling that one story, and everyone finds out that that's how you kind of met, and that story carries on. Now, what if you're like a brand? Let's say you're like Yelp, because that's where I come from. So at Yelp, we loved it when we produced in-person events that made people meet. So it wasn't like business networking events. It was really like, imagine like the best birthday party you've ever been to, or that dinner party that you sat across from somebody and you became like best friends at. And Derek knows because he's met friends on Yelp. What happens when Derek goes and tells people how he met so-and-so or such and such? The story becomes, I met at a Yelp party. 5 years later, and the story of how somebody met is still related to your brand. So figuring out what your story is for your own nonprofit that people would want to tell as part of their everyday lives, super valuable. Questions about how to do that or what that is? Yeah, Lee? Sorry?
When it comes to like documenting a story, where do you suggest that we're living? Like on the website, putting on Facebook, like where's your story live, what you have?
I think it depends on your audience. Like I like to put things into like a storify kind of thing so I can keep adding or curating. I've started using Quietly, which is still in beta, but it allows you to like curate a lot of different like articles. Some people like to use like favoriting on Twitter to keep all that stuff together. So I think it really depends on you. Again, these are the tools that you're using. So I hope that answers. Okay, keep going, Crystal. Okay. Act human. Make mistakes. Put it out there. Be personal. I hope lots of you tweeted about your lunch and then tweeted at Tacofino like I did, because maybe then they'll recognize that and maybe they'll give me a free taco another time. People like seeing that you're human because that makes it easier to say, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you in time, right? People expect brands or charities or anything that seems to have some kind of organizational layer, like they have their stuff together, their website looks good. They must know everything that they're doing, but we don't. We make lots of mistakes, right? So being human gives you the opportunity to fess up to those mistakes and to have people just follow alongside of you because you do make mistakes. Hootsuite's a good example of this. Sometimes their product totally breaks and people still just keep using it because they did a really good job of building the community at the beginning so that we would stay with them throughout any kind of like little turbulent bits, right? And those are the kinds of things that you're trying to create as well, and you do that by showing off your personal side. So don't be afraid to like take a picture of it next time everyone gathers around for birthday cake, or this morning I tweeted about toast and jam because that's what Invoke Labs was having for breakfast because we do breakfast on Fridays. Questions about how to act human online? Yes?
I have a question.
think every organization has to like think about that on kind of a strategic level. Like if you're only 1 or 2 people in an organization, then it's probably in your bio with like your personal Twitters, so you don't have to like sign off or whatever. At our company, there's 4 of us that manage the Invoke Labs stream, so each one of us like signs off and we just do the initials because we don't actually have our names in our bios. I really like it when the bigger organizations say what their names are, like the full name, although I also recognize that that's really hard in a tweet.
Yeah.
So there's that to think about as well. It's like, is the information more important or the name that's coming from it more important? So exactly, or you can shorten that name. Yeah.
You're focusing on Twitter, but I wonder if you might be able to answer Facebook.
Sure.
So in the active human and engaging your community kind of, what, like, we did a photo contest throughout the winter, and we had a lot of people post pictures, and people were posting it on our timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the past, I had the timeline not let people post. So then I opened it up, people were getting confused. Then I kept getting people posting random, like, self-promoting things, stuff that I necessarily didn't want. And so it's a hard fine line to kind of, and so you take away that engagement by not allowing people to post on your timeline, but
Yeah.
then you may open yourself up to
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Anytime we open ourselves up and we're vulnerable about something, then of course we let in some of the bad stuff too. So the question was really like, what happens when people post like promotional things on timelines instead of the contest or whatever that we've created? So I mean, I think you as an organization, you need to make a decision. It's kind of like you're creating the rules of your own page, right? It's like at a house, shoes on or shoes off. It's up to you, right? So if you're going the way of like closing it off again, oh my gosh, I only have 2 minutes. If you're going the way by closing it off, then you want to just make sure that you've given them another opening there. So you might have to, use some of the contesting platforms and then maybe repost their photos to timeline as well. So it's not just living somewhere else like in a photo album. If you want to discuss more afterwards, I will be here. We can keep the conversation going on Facebook if you prefer that over Twitter. I'm down with that. Okay. Next, invest in sharing. I'm going to go back to Twitter, but this works for Facebook as well. This is the easiest way to get people to notice that you're there and to re-engage back with you. So share without abandon. I'm going to flip through 2 more, and then I'll take the rest of the questions because he's going to kick me off soon. Measure everything. I already talked about that resource thing, so I promise I will get it to you. But I think the most important thing is you don't want to be wasting your time doing something that's having 0 impact without iterating and tweaking it so that it does have some impact. So just make sure that you measure everything that you happen to be doing, small and large. And then follow through. This happens a lot. Eli and I were talking about this earlier, yes, you. You didn't know, but we were talking about this earlier, I know. We were talking about events and how we planned the whole thing, or how I planned this whole thing, but then didn't really factor in all the conversation and stuff that would be happening and how long these things would take, the 1 minute that's left came almost done. But more important than strategizing, I see this way too often. People spend 90% of their time strategizing, and then they forget about the part where they have to promote the event, or they have to promote the campaign, or they have to actually engage with people, and that stuff takes time. We need to reverse that. 10% should be spent on strategizing, 90% should be spent on implementation, okay? I hire nobody that says things to me like, I just want to strategize. You are out in my world. Okay, one more thing. The last thing that really savvy people do, they do things like what you're doing here today. They make learning a huge priority. We need to make professional development and opportunities to connect with our peers a bigger priority because it makes us all a lot better when we go back to whatever our office is. Eli was alluding to my community manager camp away, so anybody who's in social media or in community management, this one's for you. And because you guys rock, I'm giving you $50. And to do that, you just go to bit.ly/CM Campaway. That's where you get your tickets. I'll still leave that up. And type in that code and get $50 off. Ta-da! I'm done. Questions? Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
How do you build your Twitter community or your audience when we've discovered that most of them are, and they're not necessarily on Twitter, so we struggle with building that audience there?
Well, I guess the bigger question is, why do you feel the need to be on Twitter if most of your audience keeps growing on Facebook?
I've been using it mainly when we have events and we do sponsors and resort places that we're at.
so I mean, I think if you can develop it, maybe it's developing a different audience on Twitter. You know, I feel like Twitter is a really great way to get in touch with potential partners, sponsors, people on more of like a business kind of level, but it might not be the best way to engage with like the individual person who's, you know, using Facebook for like their personal kinds of needs, right? So think about like who are there different people who are engaging with you on each platform, and is that kind of the challenge? Because it shouldn't be trying to get the people who are on Facebook onto Twitter necessarily. Yes, there's going to be overlap. You should be thinking of each stream as like a different property. So if it's a different property, it has a different, they're like in different neighborhoods, right? So it's different people who are coming to those different neighborhoods, and it's you that needs to identify how to engage with them. He wants me to leave, yes. Sorry, on using which? Oh, LinkedIn, that's a whole other beast, isn't it? Yeah. So I have found myself that LinkedIn is most successful when used as a human being. So if you are cool with putting yourself out there, building relationships that are more like a personal networking relationship than like your nonprofit to like another business, for example, seems to be a stronger play. People are on LinkedIn, people are really susceptible to like everything because it's out of all the platforms, it's got the most spam. Right? It's got the most like direct asks, cold call, sales and things. So people are pretty like off-put like that. So I think you really have to come at it as like as an individual person acting on behalf of your organization.
So if you intend to do that Net2 Vancouver meetup group, we'll also be promoting that stuff out there. Basically,